And welcome back, our dear viewers. As we have been hearing in the report, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with the Kuwaiti Parliament Speaker. He talked about the importance of the unity between Egypt and the Gulf states, and the security of both Egypt and the Gulf states is one. So how do you read that in light of all the development that we are seeing in the whole region?
It's very true, actually. In the region, comparing what's happening today to what used to be 10 years ago, it's more crucial that all countries in this region consider, all the neighboring countries, especially the Arab countries, consider themselves as one entity.
Yeah.
So it's a very important situation, but what's more important is that the joint Arab force. So if we can talk about this, it's very important because it's not sectarian, it's not religious. So even the Islamic coalition that had been declared by Saudi Arabia, to me there are some question marks about it, and especially why Islamic. So it's very critical these days to talk about religious coalition while we have all these wars actually considering themselves, all the parties in these wars considering themselves representing the religion. So having a political coalition, military coalition based on political and geographic concepts, it is the best for all of us.
Yeah.
So, and it will help actually make us able to confront any on-ground problems that are going on without international interference on the ground, because any international interference from any forces on the lands, it would be actually, maybe it would just make things worse.
Yeah.
So let's talk if we want to solve what's happening in Syria. If it is the joint Arab force with Syrian forces joining them, it would be much easier than if we have international Turkish or British or American or whatever forces on the ground. So the basic thing actually to face the dangers we can see now is the joint Arab force. It would help very much.
Indeed. And back to Al-Ahram, and we read, Egypt strongly condemned the attack on the Saudi embassy in Tehran, and Riyadh says Iran is a country that sponsors terrorism and its rule is blind sectarian. Strong Arab and international condemnation of the assaults on the Saudi embassy and consulate in Tehran. Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubair announced last day that Saudi Arabia was severing diplomatic ties with Iran after demonstrators stormed its Tehran embassy and protest against Riyadh execution of the Shiite cleric. Jubair added that all Iranian diplomats must leave Saudi Arabia within 48 hours. Earlier, Egypt condemned the storming of the Iranian protesters to the Saudi embassy in Tehran, asserting the importance of respecting the premises of the diplomatic missions. Indeed, we are going to comment about the developments in the Saudi-Iranian relations, but first we'll take this report and then we'll be back to comment.
Saudi Arabia broke off diplomatic ties with Iran on Sunday after protesters ransacked its embassy in Tehran to protest the execution of a Shiite cleric. Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubair made the announcement at a news conference in Riyadh and said that Iranian diplomats have 48 hours to leave the kingdom. Al-Jubair said that Saudi Arabia is breaking off diplomatic ties with Iran and requests that all members of the Iranian diplomatic mission leave within 48 hours, accusing Tehran of seeking to destabilize the region. He added that Iran's history is full of negative interference and hostility in Arab issues, and it is always accompanied by destruction. Al-Jubair noted that Saudi authorities had asked their Iranian counterparts to ensure security at the embassy, but they did not cooperate and failed to protect it. The diplomatic fallout come as Iran's supreme leader said that Saudi Arabia would face quick consequences for executing Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, and as Washington urged regional leaders to soothe the escalating sectarian tensions. On Saturday, a mob attacked the Saudi embassy in Tehran and a consulate in the second city of Mashhad amid protests at Nimr's execution. Nimr was put to death along with 46 other people, including convicted militants, who the Saudi Interior Ministry says were involved in Al-Qaeda attacks that killed dozens of people in 2003 and 2004.
And welcome back, our dear viewers. Now we are going to talk about the latest developments concerning the relations between Iran and Riyadh after the cutting of the diplomatic ties between the two countries and the Saudi decision that all the diplomatic mission in Saudi Arabia should leave its territories within 48 hours. How do you see the recent developments?
I see it's a very dangerous and very worrying developments, and actually to me it's not important who started what, but we are really now at the edge in this region. So it's about, it could be the start of a really bad sectarian militant war.
Indeed.
Actually. So what's really needed is that all the wise voices who can talk to both governments should advise them to be whiter and actually tackle whatever problems there are. There are problems, there are deep problems, there are mistakes.
But was this incident used in order to create a tense situation? Because from my point of view, and allow me to say it here, Ms. Nafisa, that it's internal issue. If I am trying or executing some nationals in my territories, so it's an internal affair. Why should a country like Iran interfere in the matter?
Actually, what's happening is that all countries comment on what's happening in all countries.
Yes.
So if you remember, regardless to the difference of the situation in Egypt,
yes,
all the sentences we have commented.
Yes, indeed, yes.
But we did not allow protesters to storm in the consulates. So this is the very grave mistake. Regardless, it's not about commenting or
it's about action that took place on the ground.
It's about what happened on the ground, which is a violation actually to the international laws. But actually taking it to the second point from Saudi Arabia and cut the relationship and the continuation of actually threats and the harsh words between both countries, it's very dangerous not to both countries, it's very dangerous to the whole region. We have a Sunni Shiite issue in Syria. It's part of, it's politics basically, it's who would rule in the end. It's not about Sunni and Shiite, the reality of the struggle, it's not Sunni and Shiite, but actually it's being used to keep the war going. This is the situation in Syria, this is sort of the situation in Yemen on the ground. People talk to normal people as Sunni and Shiite.
Yes.
It's the situation in Iraq. There are problems in Bahrain because of Sunni and Shiite. There might be problems in Kuwait. So actually, this is the gravity of the situation here. It's not about two countries that are, have political disputes or have legal disputes or whatsoever. It can turn this region into, this region into a very bad sectarian war. This is the danger, and this actually needs all those
and it
who
could have
can
somehow a domino effect, I believe, which could have a negative repercussion on many other countries in the region.
Of course, if you have 4 countries in the region, so no one can expect that a country would stay safe. So it's very dangerous. That's why actually, regardless to what's happening, what kind of mistakes, who committed these mistakes, and which country committed what mistakes, both should calm down and tackle things more wisely from now on.
Hopefully. And from Al-Ahram we read Some local news. The General Secretary of the House of Representatives say taking oath and the election of the House Speaker and his 2 deputies in one session. The General Secretary of the House of Representatives say in an interview with the paper the ceremony of taking the constitutional oath by the MPs and the election of the Speaker of the Parliament and his 2 deputies to take place in one session. £500 only the reward of the Member of Parliament at the beginning of the parliamentary round and not 30,000. And still with the same issue but from Al-Masri Al-Yum. A struggle at the House of Representatives on forming the government. Who should form the government is the first issue of differences in the House of Representatives. Bakri says the list of In the Love of Egypt has a right. And the Secretariat of the Representatives says the President assigns whoever is nominated by the majority. And still with the same issue but from Al-Yum Al Sabagh. After rumors that it is preparing to compete in the local elections, In the Love of Egypt bloc in the parliament denounces In the Love of Egypt of the localities. And Sifil Yazal says our list ended with the end of the elections of the House of Representatives. Still the Parliament or the House of Representatives did not start, but we are started to see arguments and people saying things about the House Speakers and the deputies who will form the government and all these issues. How do you see the developments?
I see it's the same situation actually when it started about who is going to join and what is the name of the bloc and everything. If you remember, we have talked about it and we said that it's not about who should join and for what reason. It's basically because who would form the cabinet later. So now it's about the bloc, whether the bloc is going to form to be the majority of the parliament, so they should legally have the right to form the government, or something would happen during the coming days, which is not, I'm not expecting it, but they said something would happen so that they are not the majority and there are another party that gets the majority in the parliament. But what seems to be until today that the bloc would have the majority and would have the right to form the coming cabinet. So actually this is the expectation, what kind of cabinet they are going to choose and whether they would have a program or not and what kind of program they should have. This would come out later on during the coming days. Indeed.
And back to Al-Masri Al-Yum, we read from its main banner, a new coalition to build a new administrative capital. The Ministry of Housing says the signing of the memos of understanding with the 3 companies, 3 Egyptian and Chinese companies, to build a new administrative capital. And President Sisi says it is important to efficiently prepare a number of cooperation projects to pave the way for the Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Cairo. The President's statements came during his meeting with the Prime Minister Sharif Ismail. And still with the same issue, and from Al-Yum Al Sabagh, we read the coalition of the Egyptian Chinese companies to carry out the projects of the new administrative capital. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail headed on Sunday a meeting of the Chinese unit in preparation for the Chinese President's expected visit to Cairo. Ismail stressed the need to boost bilateral relations. Earlier during a cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister called for the Ministers of Local Development and Transportation to ensure that all ferries are registered and have undergone regular maintenance. Of course, preparations ahead of the expected visit by the Chinese President to Egypt, and we are seeing some movement on the ground on the economic and investment levels. How do you see this development, and do you believe to see more cooperation between Egypt and China in the coming period?
I think we will see, and actually there are more cooperation and more investments and projects going on with China, but it's not declared and it's not very well known. So what's important is that the project of the administrative capital is postponed, which after all the questioning to this project, it just came by chance, but it's good so that there are more studies, and actually choosing different companies, some Egyptian, the other is Chinese, is very good. So the Chinese are not going to participate in something that's useless to them. I hope there is a better plan for such projects later on, so that there is no fears about their results and when they are coming to show out or return for the Egyptians.
Indeed, Ms. Nafisa El Sabagh, the journalist and chief editor of Masriyat, thank you very much for your precious input, and have a lovely morning.
You're welcome.
And with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of our press review for today. Now we'll go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to resume the segments of The Breakfast Show, so stay tuned.